Thank you so much for joining me today on the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast to share your journey and I guess your story into motherhood. So welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So you approached me on Instagram, which is great to hear from you. And you told me a little bit about what had happened. And I just thought it would be great to chat because I do love chatting to everyday mums about their journey, because I think everyone's got a special story to tell and every story is unique. How old is your baby now?
My baby's just turned 13 weeks,
And how
so
is,
just over 3 months.
yeah, amazing. Take us back to when you became pregnant. Had you been trying for a while?
Yeah, so my husband and I had been trying kind of on and off for about 12 months and, you know, just doing it the whole natural way. I didn't want to use any kind of ovulation kits or anything like that. We just thought we'll see what happens if we don't try, so to speak. And we didn't have any success. So then I purchased some ovulation kits and started doing that tracking and downloaded an app to help me better track my cycle. I'd been on birth control for quite a long time. I was on the pill for quite a few years leading up to it. Initially, for period pains and then for anxiety management. So I was not entirely sure how my cycle really worked after being on the pill for that long. And I imagine that's probably why we had some difficulty initially. Once we started with the kits and tracking, we got pregnant probably within 4 or 5 months from memory. Then that one unfortunately ended in an early term miscarriage. Um, Thankfully without needing any medical intervention in clearing that. And then we were successfully pregnant again about 4 months later.
Okay, so how long was that from start to your second pregnancy?
Probably about 2 years.
2 years, okay.
Yeah.
Pretty bit of a long road for you.
Yeah, it was a longer journey than I was expecting. A few people around me had mentioned that they got pregnant really quickly, kind of in the first few times that they'd tried. And I went into the journey feeling probably a bit overconfident that that was going to be our journey as well. And I think for that reason as well, I put it off for a bit longer than I would have if I had have been a bit more informed about how long things can take, and factors that may contribute to, miscarriage or just taking a little while longer to conceive, tracking cycles, etc. So, yeah.
Yeah. And how was your, I guess, your mental health during those 2 years with the miscarriage?
Look, it was difficult. I think just every month getting your period again, and almost being certain, like I would psych myself up thinking this is the month it's going to happen. And I would be so tuned in to every single thing I was feeling in my body. And I think I probably just put far too much focus on it. We ended up getting pregnant when we went on holiday, and I actually was relaxed. And I guess the timing just synced up. And yeah, I think, for some people, just relaxing and not overthinking it can help. That's obviously not the same thing for everyone, but I think that certainly helped us.
Mm. I remember in those days when you're trying to conceive, thinking, I can't overthink it. I can't overthink it. Got to relax, got to relax. But it can be hard to relax when you're in the moment. So did you have any specific things that helped, or was it just going on holiday?
I think it was just taking the pressure off of myself. I needed
Yeah.
to come to the realization on my own that I just needed to relax. My OB was really supportive as well, and he kind of indicated, you know, miscarriages happen, and I know that we tend to tell people that have had a miscarriage that it's not helpful to hear them say, but at least you know you can get pregnant. However, coming from my obstetrician, that actually was very helpful because at that point I was starting to think, you know, I'm very quickly approaching 35. Maybe I can't actually get pregnant. Maybe there's something that's been undiagnosed and I've left this for too long, and you know, the boat has sailed and I didn't even get a chance to really try. So
Mm.
for me, hearing him tell me that was very helpful. However, hearing other people tell me that was less helpful. So I think it
Yeah,
really
okay.
depends on who it's coming from. Yeah.
Yeah. And how did you find out you were pregnant second time round?
Just a pregnancy test. I don't know. I almost felt when I was pregnant, I knew, like I really knew immediately, and it definitely felt different compared to all the previous times that I thought I was pregnant. Even with the miscarriage, I had some symptoms like a sudden aversion to the chocolate, the smell of hot chocolate. But with this pregnancy, the successful pregnancy, it was just this internal feeling that I wanted to buy baby things. And I'd never in my life felt the urge to buy any kind of item for a baby. And I just had this sudden urge. And that was actually within days of us having tried. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
took a
right.
pregnancy test. I think it was a day before my period was due. And it came up with a very faint line, and my husband couldn't even see it. Then I took another one a couple of days later and I waved it in his face, said, "See, I told you." So, yeah, it was good.
Yeah, lovely. So how did pregnancy progress for you?
Luckily, I had a really good pregnancy. It was fairly easy. I didn't have a lot of symptoms, uncomfortable symptoms anyway. I just had some fatigue very early on and a little bit of nausea. And then later on in the pregnancy, I had some pelvic girdle pain and lower back pain. But apart from that, it was a really cruisy pregnancy. I remember my obstetrician being so shocked at my iron levels because they were actually really good, very high during the 28-week scan that I had or tests. And they were at 51. And I think what he'd mentioned is that most women at that stage are in single digits. So
Ooh.
he was, yeah, full on nerding out, showing me all the stats on what they usually like and wanting to know what I was doing to keep my iron at that level. But
Yeah.
um, I've
What were you?
just always had
Okay.
naturally high iron levels, and I kind of just kept up the eating everything in moderation, lots of oats, bircher muesli kind of things, but nothing in particular.
Do you have much red meat?
I don't think any more than kind of your average person. I have
Hmm.
it a couple times a week, usually in mince form, but
Yeah.
yeah, no more than average.
Yeah, interesting. And what stage? So you're at 28 weeks, you find out you've got good iron levels, so that's a bonus. At what stage did you start to think about birth, your upcoming birth, and thinking, okay, perhaps I need to prepare myself or not? Did you not? That was a
I
leading
didn't.
question. I shouldn't have asked
It
that.
was yeah, it's okay. I was probably I know I started watching a lot of YouTube videos as I neared the third trimester. Um, a little bit about, you know, what to expect, what to maybe include in a birth plan, or birth preferences, as the hospital I went to suggested we call it, because plans are kind of setting yourself up for failure, whereas a preference will better help you to, you know, think about what you would like in an ideal situation and come to terms with it a little bit easier if it doesn't exactly go along those lines. So yeah, I'd say as I neared the third trimester, I started thinking a lot more about labor, what kind of pain management I wanted, packing the bags, you know, talking to my family about who would take care of our dog and things like that.
Yeah. And just out of interest, because I've you're the first I've heard of who used YouTube as I guess, the media platform of choice um, to gather all that information. Did you find a lot on YouTube?
I did. A lot of it was actually American though,
Mm.
which is obviously very different with their medical system and hospital system compared to Australia. So I did find it very hard to find information from Australian vloggers.
Mm.
I did find a couple, some from midwives. As much as possible, I do try to find the information from medical professionals, and then some supplementary information just from, your general female recounting her birth story and what she
Yep.
found helpful. But yeah, I think it was just because I was spending so much time on the couch and at work, I was doing a lot of reading. So really, by the end of the day, I didn't want to be on a small screen or reading books because I did that all day, every day. So
Yeah.
YouTube was just my leisure,
Yeah,
my break,
interesting.
and I found myself gravitating. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you were checking out YouTube quite a bit. You were thinking about your birth preferences. What were there any specific birth preferences you were after?
Yeah, I think the big token one for me was I did not want epidural under any circumstances. I don't like feeling out of control. And for me, knowing that there was a chance that I might not have full feeling of any part of my body really frightened me. I know that they can change the dosage of the epidural. So, some women can still feel what's going on, but it wasn't worth the thought and the panic for me. So I just straight up indicated no epidural at all, unless, my OB thought that it was absolutely necessary and I wasn't going to make it without. I wanted to be fully in control of my body.
Yep. And were there any other birth preferences that you indicated, even if they're not, I guess, big preferences? And I say that in air quotation marks, but
Yeah. Yeah, there were a few things like wanting to use a fit ball during labor, wanting to use a shower, preferences around the golden hour, making sure that my baby was put straight on my chest when she was born, that my husband would cut the cord. What else had I put on my birth preferences? I was open to the use of morphine and nitrous oxide, but that would kind of be dependent on circumstance. I wanted it offered to me, but I didn't want it kind of pushed on me. I wanted to be encouraged to drink water very regularly and use the bathroom regularly because I read that helped also with recovery, and just hydration throughout labor. I think they were the main birth preferences I had.
And how did you go about communicating them with your team?
Yeah, so I had a conversation with my obstetrician initially. He just wanted to know about the kind of more medical side of things. So me not wanting the epidural was mainly what he was interested in. In relation to when I was at the hospital in the birth suite, I had actually emailed myself a copy of the birth preferences, and then I just forwarded it on to them when we were in there, and they read it there and then for me.
Good idea. Okay, tell me about the lead up, or tell us, I should say, about the lead up to your birth.
Okay, so I should probably mention that I had received a positive status of strep B, which is also known as group strep B. And basically, I don't know if you want me to go into
Go for
what
it.
that is. So it's a type of bacteria that naturally lives in our intestines, urinary and genital tracts, and it comes and goes throughout your life. Now, I'm not a medical professional, so I'm just recounting the information that I remember my obstetrician gave me about it.
And we're
So,
actually, for anyone listening that's interested, we're going to chat to an obstetrician. I'm just in the pipelines of organising the recording date. We're going to talk all about GBS. But yeah, so it's exciting. So, but keep going, Rachel.
That would have been really helpful for me pre-pregnancy because
Sorry.
I was so I was actually really stressed when I found out that I had tested positive to GBS. But it's actually apparently very, very common. 1 in 4 pregnant women actually carry the bacteria. Um, I'm told that it's largely harmless in adults, but it's very dangerous for newborns and for adults with chronic conditions as well. Most people don't even know that they have it. But what stressed me out the most was, I suppose, the lack of available information, or not available information, the lack of conversation around GBS. So, despite the fact that apparently 1 in 4 women carry it, I have had so many friends that were pregnant, and at no stage has anyone ever mentioned GBS. And I don't know, I think maybe it's just because it's a bacteria, it sounds a bit gross, and you know, kind of maybe in the same way that STDs or STIs aren't really spoken about too openly, maybe GBS is also avoided because it's not something that you really brag about or
Mm,
are proud of. It's yeah, it's a bacteria. So
mm.
um, I was calmed down quite a lot by my obstetrician, who assured me that it was perfectly fine, very manageable. And basically, all I would need to do is make sure that as soon as I went into labor, I called the hospital and immediately went in. So there would be no laboring at home for me. That was my advice. And that's ultimately what I had to do when my waters broke. So just called the hospital straight away and went straight in.
Okay. And where were you when your waters broke?
So my waters broke in the evening on, I think it was a Saturday night, which was very convenient. I was actually at my parents' house, waiting a family dinner with my parents, my sister, her partner. I was sitting on there on a bench seat talking to my sister, and I moved forward in the seat to say something, and all of a sudden I felt a pop. And the pop was followed by quite a gush. So I had been told not to expect waters breaking to be like a movie moment, but it was a movie moment for me. Yeah, I
And how many
remember putting
weeks?
my hand up. Sorry,
No, keep going.
I remember putting my hand up to kind of pause my conversation with my sister as I processed what likely had just happened before I ran into the bathroom to investigate. And yeah, that's how I confirmed it was my waters.
Yeah, wow. And how many weeks were you here?
I was 39 weeks and 6 days, so
Oh, wow.
a day
Right
before my
on.
due date. Yeah.
And were you sitting on carpet? Like, did it go everywhere or was it pretty contained?
No, thankfully I was it's floored tile and I was wearing jeans and a precautionary pad. So yeah, it was fine. It didn't go everywhere and I had yeah, spare pads in my bag and everything to avoid any mess.
Well, that's one way of having an eventful family dinner, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you called the hospital, you left the family
Called
dinner.
the hospital. hmm Left the family dinner, called the hospital, packed the rest of the bits and pieces that needed to go into suitcase. I informed the hospital that my waters had broken and that my OB had told me that I were to go straight in due to the GBS. They told me, take your time. You're a first time mum. There's no rush. It'll all be fine. So don't stress. So in we went. Thankfully, it was I think a 20-minute drive for us to get to the hospital. I was so grateful it wasn't during peak hour because it would have taken us easily over an hour from where we live to get to the hospital.
And how are you
But we got
feeling
there.
during
Yeah.
that drive?
It felt surreal. It felt surreal knowing that that was going to be the last car ride, where it was just my husband and I and my dog as a family, and that the next time I got in that car, it would be a family of four. So yeah, it was just so surreal processing it. Just listening to the music on the radio, and it was like everything was so normal for everyone else, but my life was about to change, and I just had no idea what was ahead of me, how labor was going to look.
Mm. So were you in any, were there any surges coming at this stage, or how were you feeling in your body?
No surges, all relaxed. I just kept feeling the liquid continue to come, and I was sitting on a towel in the car as well. So I was given some advice to other pregnant friends of mine. Make sure you've got a towel on the seat in your car, because you don't know if your waters break, how much is going to come. But yeah, just very, very relaxed. I didn't have any contractions at that point. They started a little while later.
Yeah. So you book into hospital, you head to your room
Mhm. Go
and
to the birth suite. We have a conversation about birth preferences. They set me up with a gown. I get into the bed. We hadn't had dinner because my waters broke just before the pizza was served. And so the hospital set me up with some sandwiches and some fruit, which I happily enjoyed in the hospital bed whilst I watched the Dallas Cowboy Texas cheerleaders on Amazon. Um, the hospital I was at allowed you to kind of sign into any accounts that you have, and you could watch whatever you wanted basically while you were in the birth suite, to keep you occupied until you could no longer focus on that kind of thing.
yeah,
So yeah, I was having a great time
just chilling out.
chilling out, watching TV. My husband was there snacking with me. It was, yeah, all good.
And at what stage could you no longer watch TV?
My contractions came on fast. So I think the timelines are a little fuzzy for me now, but I think I was there for maybe an hour before contractions actually started. They started off kind of, 5 minutes apart, and I was able to put into action some of the breathing techniques that I'd learned on YouTube, and have my husband kind of support me and massage my lower back and, hold my lower back in the way that I was asking, which helped ease some of the discomfort. And then I just got to the point where I was in so much pain. And the midwife was telling me, it's just so early on. I don't think you're going to make it without an epidural. You're in a huge amount of pain, and you've probably got at least 12, 13 hours ahead of you. So, we're really encouraging you to think about an epidural. Um, I, as I'd indicated earlier, I was sure I didn't want an epidural. So I said, absolutely not. Come up with another option for me. So she suggested some morphine and sleeping tablet. I wanted some time to think about it. So I went to the toilet. They told me, whatever you do on the toilet, just even if you have the urge, don't push. So I thought, okay, that's a strange thing to say when you've just told me I've got 12 to 13 hours ahead of me, but fine. So I went to the bathroom. When I came back, they were still encouraging me to take the morphine and the sleeping tablet. So I agreed, and they tucked me in effectively and said, "We'll see you at 4 a.m. or something similar to that, 2 a.m. Night, and when you wake up, you'll have the energy to get through your labor." Not even 5 minutes later, the pain just became excruciating. I remember trying to find the nurse call button on the side of the bed, and I couldn't focus enough to find it. So my husband pressed it, and the midwife came back in, and she seemed very confused at the way I was reacting, my pain levels, and at that point asked to check my dilation. And I said, yes, of course, do what you need to do. And it turns out I was actually already 9 centimeters dilated. So I probably didn't need the morphine at that point or the sleeping tablet. But that's where that was.
Okay, so you just had a sleeping tablet, ready to go to sleep and have a bit of a nap. You ended up being 9 centimeters dilated instead. Talk us
Yes,
through
yes, I
those
was.
next few minutes and hours.
So perhaps understandably, a lot of that time is quite a bit of a haze for me because of the effects of the drugs. So a lot of it I can't remember in detail. My husband has filled me in on a lot. Apparently, I was in and out of consciousness whilst I was pushing. So I do remember snippets kind of coming to and seeing the midwives telling me to push and how to hold my legs and how to breathe. And I know I was receiving nitrous oxide, which at that point, I don't know if it was really doing anything or if it was just helping me regulate my breathing, but I was thrilled to have it. Um, and I was only in active labor for I think 5 hours. So she was delivered at 4 a.m. So my waters broke at 6:30 p.m. the night before. She was delivered at 4 a.m. And yeah, so much of that labor is a haze to me, which has been difficult for me to come to terms with in some ways,
Mm,
but I still consider it quite a positive birth story.
mm.
Um, you know, I was present. I could feel my faculties. I knew what was going on despite coming in and out of consciousness. I was still there for it, so to speak.
So were you
And I
just
do
having
remember
naps in between
apparently
pushes?
micro naps. That's how my husband described it. I
Yeah,
would kind
wow.
of close my eyes and seemingly nod off to sleep, and then a few minutes later, I would start breathing very rapidly and heavily, and then my eyes would open and would start like pushing and following, the prompts of the
Yeah,
medical staff. So yeah, very
amazing.
strange.
Gosh.
Mm.
And how long were you pushing for? Can you remember the pushing phase?
It was no, I have no recollection of how long I was pushing for.
Yeah,
I don't think it was overly long. My husband thinks it was maybe around an hour. Uh,
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
And did you know if you were having a little boy or girl at that stage?
Yeah, so we found out at the earliest possible opportunity um, what our baby was going to be. So I think for us, it was about 10 or 12 weeks when they do the first round of blood tests. We found out that we were having a girl. We wanted to know so that we could, start picking names. I felt like I would better be able to bond with my baby if I could start envisioning certain things. Yeah, I don't know. We
Yeah.
just both were on the same page about wanting to know whether it was going to be a girl or a boy so we could start imagining what our life might look like when they
Yeah,
arrived.
beautiful. So you were pushing and then you're falling, having a little mini nap to give you the extra bit of energy to push again.
Yep.
Do you remember that final push?
I do, yes. I remember the final push, and I remember the midwives telling me to make sure I kept my eyes open because my baby was coming. And they kept saying, Rachael, keep your eyes open. Your baby is here. Your baby is here. And then I remember her being placed on my chest and my husband being shown how to cut the cord. So I do remember seeing that and hearing those words and, yeah, feeling that relief. I also remember delivering the placenta, which was disgusting. It felt like a giant jellyfish just flopping out of me. Um, I think that was worse than labor for me. Yeah.
In what way? The sensation?
Just yes, the sensation, the feeling of it. I don't know. It just didn't feel, I have no idea how to describe the feeling of delivering the placenta except for it
Bloop.
being like a jellyfish. Yeah, bloop, exactly. Perfect.
Funny. Um, Amazing. Did you stay in that delivery suite for long? Like what happened with your little baby girl?
Yeah, so we had an hour together. We took some photos as a family, as most people probably try to do. Um, and my husband held her for a little bit as well. And I had my first shower after the first hour, supervised by the lovely midwife. which was great. I thought I would spend a lot longer in that shower. I heard amazing things about your first shower after giving birth, and I just kind of wanted to get it done and get into bed as soon as possible so I could just nap for a few more hours.
Yeah. So, Rachel, with GBS, did they do anything or did they suggest anything straight after your baby had been born?
Yeah, so with GBS, basically you need IV antibiotic treatment. So for me, the recommendation was 2 courses of antibiotics during my labor to make sure that my baby was protected from GBS. So effectively, as soon as I settled into the birth suite, they started giving me the antibiotics. And luckily, despite having the short labor, it was just enough time to get the 2 rounds in. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, fantastic. And when did you try your first breastfeed?
The first, well, it was hand express colostrum initially, which was basically immediately after the birth. The midwives were helping me do that. Um, and it was probably on I think it was day 2 or day 3, I attempted breastfeeding, which was a slow process for us. She had some trouble latching. Basically, she would just flick her tongue up every time she approached the nipple or would suck in her bottom lip. So it was a little difficult to get her to breastfeed initially, but there was a really great lactation consultant who came in pretty much every day whilst I was in the hospital. And I was there for 4 nights, 5 days. And yeah, it was great. We got the support that we needed, and by the time we left, I was breastfeeding, and we were also doing some formula feeding as well because she'd lost more than 10% of her body weight. So we were just trying to get her weight back up. But yeah, it was all
Yeah,
good.
great. And remind me, in terms of the birth, you had a small episiotomy, is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So I had a small episiotomy just for that final bit of help to get her out because I was so tired having been in and out of consciousness. And yeah, my OB said I just needed that little bit of extra assistance. Um, I could actually feel all of the stitches afterwards. Unfortunately, the anesthetic did not work on me, despite them trying a couple of times to add some extra anesthetic. So my poor OB was apologizing with every stitch. It was actually kind of sweet. I've never heard a doctor apologize so often before. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. It'll be over soon. I don't know why it didn't work. Apparently, that just happens with some people.
And how did it feel when you're putting stitches in?
Like you'd think it felt.
Mm,
I
okay.
do some cross stitching as part of a hobby of mine, and it felt like cross stitching sounds. So for anyone that's familiar with that, but it didn't last too long. And I think, I had a little bit of adrenaline coursing through the veins, and I knew it needed to be done, and it was temporary. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you're telling me all this with a big smile on your face. So
It's in
thankfully,
the past, yes.
yeah, it hasn't had long-lasting effects.
No.
No. Okay, great. So all in all, a beautiful positive birth story. Would you consider?
Yes. I mean,
But
I would. I think maybe some other people might not consider it that much of a positive birth story. But yeah, look, I came out of it feeling like I'd had a great pregnancy. My labor was fairly quick for a first time mum. And because it was quicker, I wasn't in pain for as long. So I feel like mentally the strain just wasn't the same as what someone who's been through a 37-hour labor, for example, may have felt. There wasn't that level of exhaustion for me.
Mhm.
And yes, whilst we had, the issue with the medication when I was already quite dilated, the staff was still really excellent. And I've since been in contact with the hospital to, discuss that with them, and um, make sure that that's added to their protocols, that an assumption shouldn't just be made because someone's a first time mum,
Mm.
that labor will take a while and that it should be a procedure to check dilation before the administration of heavy
Mm.
medication like morphine and sleeping tablets.
Mm.
And they were so responsive and acknowledged, that things potentially could have been done differently, and that it is going to be discussed at some of their upcoming meetings and added to protocols in the future. So, I feel like that's great as well. What more can you ask for?
Mm.
So, and I
Yeah.
have a healthy, happy baby girl.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
so positive.
Now, I'd love to know, with all your YouTube research, what was most helpful during the actual birth? Are there a couple of things that really stood out that really helped you during that stage?
Yeah, I think it was probably the breathing. So I think it's must have been hypnobirthing techniques. Some of them I used. And also I found that the pressure on the sides of my lower kind of waist where my husband would hold while I was laboring, kind of swaying back and forth, some of those movements that I remembered watching. And I remember when I watched some of them uh, in my third trimester, I would actually stand in front of the TV and kind of try and replicate the movements so that muscle memory would hopefully kick in when I was in labor. I have danced previously, so I know that, kind of the more you practice certain physical activities, the more you will remember it and it will just come to you in the moment, regardless of the level of stress you might be in. So I did try to practice a lot of those movements, even sitting on the football in my lounge room while I was watching TVs, documentaries, whatever.
Yep.
So that
Amazing.
is probably the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, talk us through your recovery. You're a couple of months postpartum. How's your body feeling?
It's feeling pretty good. I definitely feel physically weaker than I did pre-pregnancy. I've always been very active physically, either dancing, or reformer Pilates was something that I did very, very frequently in the lead up to getting pregnant. About 3 times a week, I was doing that, and then walking kind of twice a day. During pregnancy, I was also walking at least once a day, and I was doing reformer Pilates probably about twice a week until I got to that stage of pregnancy. I think it was 14 weeks where, you're no longer allowed in your regular classes because of the risk. And at 24 weeks, I started doing Pilates under a physiotherapist. So it was physio guided
Mm.
Pilates, which I think helped me a lot
Mm.
in kind of preparing my pelvic floor for birth as well.
Yeah,
Um,
fantastic.
yeah, post pregnancy, I've been back at the physio. So I started there at 7 weeks postpartum after I'd had clearance from my OB at 6 weeks, and I've been doing one uh, Pilates physio session a week since then, and I'm back to walking every day. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm getting there slowly but
yeah,
surely. I think my core
amazing.
is definitely the weakest.
Yeah, but as you said,
Yeah,
you're still early days and you're putting
yeah.
in those little stepping stones now, which is amazing.
Mm.
Okay, to wrap this up, Rachel, 3 tips for pregnant mums or new mums listening today,
Three
based
tips
on
for
your
pregnant.
experience. Yeah, what really helped you?
Okay. Oh gosh.
I should have
Three
warned you.
tips. You should have warned me. Oh, I would have put some
One
more thought
tip,
into
one
this in the
tip,
lead up.
just one tip will do.
Uh no, I think I can probably come up with three. So it would probably be to have your birth preferences, kind of do some research about the hospital that you're staying at, speak with your OB about their expectations and your expectations and desires, and then formulate a nice, clear, succinct birth preference. Make sure that your partner is aware of it. I think preparing for your hospital stay as well, making sure that you've got uh, enough support. in relation to your physical recovery and your emotional recovery. So for me, my physical recovery was aided by compression garments, which helped me with the fluid, bringing my kind of abdominal separation back in. I also used padsicles, which are pads, and you snap them, and they're cool and icy. I found those very helpful, and taking kind of the medications that work best for you. And then by way of emotional support, I had my family around me. So for the first 6 weeks, my parents and my sister would come over and assist with a lot of their house duties. So my husband and I could focus on the baby and my physical recovery.
That's amazing.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Fantastic.
a good playlist during labor helps as well. I was listening to soft classical music during my labor, which really helped put my mind at ease.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much. I do feel honored to have been able to help you share your birth story. So thanks again for touching base, and you have a beautiful story to share.
Thank you.
We will catch you soon, Rachel. All the best. Stay in touch as well.
Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at Fitness Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer: materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I'll see you soon.